Hello, good people of YouTube. Before I start with the video, I just wanted to share that I started up a school community. And school is unique because it provides me with a place where I can publish my video courses that I'm working on, but also that I can build a community around that learning. So I'm gathering a group of people who are devoted to becoming better engineers. And this is basically a place where you can ask questions and get answers to them. I really wish this existed when I got started, because when you get stuck, sometimes you just need someone to point you in the right direction. So check out the link below and I hope to see you there. So this Neovim walkthrough is actually part of a full walkthrough that I did of my entire .files repo, and that is on my school community. Let's go. Well, up next we have Neovim. This is going to be a fun section. And before I start going into the configuration, I just wanted to say a few words on why I chose LazyVim, and just quickly describe how I ended up on that, what my journey was there. So when learning Vim, I highly recommend not starting with Neovim, actually. I recommend starting with Vim or even VI and just go the old school way and learn how to configure Vim first before moving on to Neovim. Because Neovim has a lot of more added features and complexity, but it also, I think there is a risk that you will miss out on a lot of the inner workings of Vim and the philosophy behind it if you dive straight into Neovim. That being said, I did start with Vim, and I started from the bottom up with an empty config, and I just built it up from the bottom up. I took a few examples here and there, but I really wanted to do it myself by reading the manuals, and I just slowly built up the config based on the functionality that I needed. At the time I was learning YAML, so I was just editing YAML files, and I was just step by step adjusting the indentation, and then I wanted to have some colors, and then I wanted to have etc., etc. So I just slowly built that up slowly. Then I moved on to Neovim after about maybe 8 months of using Vim, 6 to 8 months. And then I did the same thing. I just configured it myself. And at that point in my journey, I was spending a lot of time configuring Neovim, and I had a lot of time in the weekends where I could do that, and it was a great learning experience. But I was also running into troubles with the LSP. So LSP is the language server that is in Neovim. So if I open let's say if I go to my lab repo, and if I just open just a random YAML file, then there is a language server in here. And if I start to write here, then you will see it is going to show me all sorts of examples. And if I do LSP info, then you see that I have a language server here. The detected file type is YAML, and the client that's attached to here is YAML LS, YAML language server. And to get all of that to work properly, that has actually been quite a struggle. That was not easy to do when I was building it myself. And at this time, AstroVim and Vim Chad or Chad Vim, I don't know what the name is, those things were starting to come around, but I was like, no, I want to do it all myself. And I was following TJ DeVries on YouTube, and then at some point he announced that he created kickstart.nvim. And this is a repo that will just get you up and running with Neovim very quickly. And it basically is just a basic configured Neovim setup with language servers. And those worked. It really worked well out of the box. And yeah, some problems I was having with my own Neovim, like sometimes it would break, and I would be working on something, it would break, and then I would have to. I couldn't spend that time at work to fix my editor, so I had to edit in Visual Studio Code for the rest of the day, was a very painful experience. So my own creations were not working out as well as I hoped they would. And I started using Kickstart for a while, but then I have a friend. He is a very senior, rather eccentric software engineer, but he has a Vim configuration of about 2,000 lines, and he spends hours and hours and days on refining it to the top level. He's amazing. And one day he was getting very excited about LazyVim. And Lazy is a package manager for Neovim. But the the person who created Lazy, the package manager, then also went on to create a Neovim distribution. And I really liked the name LazyVim. So I thought that was a really great way to do it. And I tried it out, and I was so impressed with what it looked like out of the box, how easy it was to set up. And I can tell you, I've been using LazyVim for well over a year, 1.5 years, maybe all close to 2. And yeah, at least 1.5 years. And it has never broken on me. It has never broken on me. It still works really well. It is super easy to update. And I haven't updated it for a little while. So let's just show you that. I'm in LazyVim. I press L, and here you see all of the changes that are here. And then if I press update, then it's just going to download all of the updates, and it is going to reload the config. Sometimes it throws a couple of errors and you have to restart it again. But it has always updated all of my plugins automatically, and I've never had any real breaking changes. So I am very impressed with LazyVim. I'm super happy with it. And yeah, it's basically because I started using it and I didn't feel the need to try anything else. It has never broken on me, and it is just a great way to work. So that's very shortly how I suggest you learn Vim, the trajectory, and how I ended up on LazyVim. And now let's get into the config. So I'm in my .files repo. I'm going to open LazyVim. And let's see. Why is that red now? Well, doesn't matter. I go into my LazyVim directory, and in my directory, there are a few files. So the way LazyVim works is when you set it up, you have to, let's see, you can find a starter template here. So you just create a template. This is exactly what I did. I copied this template, and this contains a few Lua files with a few configuration files in it already. And this is what you use as your starting point. So you just copy this whole directory. You can read the documentation how to do that. You create a new directory, and then you clone this into the nvim directory, and then you are good to go. So it is very, very easy to get going with this. And then you have this Lua directory that you copied. And from here, you can start configuring it. So these are all the configuration files for Neovim. And that's how the initial config ended up here. And then what Lazy does, it loads in all of the stuff that you want. So here we have lazy.lua, and this looks like a lot of code, but this was mostly all of the standard code that came with it. So just to show you, if I go in here, Lua, and then config lazy.lua, Here you see that everything in here is already here. So I didn't write any of this. This was all just standard config. And I think I did not, let's see, did I do any configuration here? I might have disabled a couple of plugins. No, these are all standard. So basically this file has not been adjusted at all. It is just the standard way of getting LazyVim up and running on your system. So that was the lazy.lua. Next, in the config directory, let's close this for now, I have the autocommands.lua. And autocommands, these are things that will load, and you can do several triggers for this. So these are a few triggers that I have basically only have a few of them that are based on the file type. So when these are meant for when I start a certain file, I want certain commands to be ran. I want certain things to happen when I open Markdown files, for example. That's the main use case that I have here. But you can go so deep with these auto commands. You can run like huge Lua scripts, and you can set documents up for yourself. It is really powerful. I didn't even dive into it that far yet, but it's basically a way to run Lua code every time you open a certain file, or you open a new buffer, or you do something that that you want to have triggered. So this auto command, I tend to write notes when I write some code. So here it says disable completion on Markdown files by default. So you call the Vim API to create an auto command based on file type. And then the pattern the file type operator is going to match is git commit and Markdown. The callback function, so the code that you want to run when it detects that certain file type, is require CMP setup enabled false. So to show you that, when I open a YAML file here, then if I start typing, you see that it has auto completion here, right? You see all these things, these suggestions, and I can press them, and then it will inject some code. Well, that is all done by CMP. And when I'm writing Markdown files, so do I have, yeah, when I'm writing Markdown files, I don't want to have this coming up because I have a shortcut here. And if I press press capital P, then, wait, was it P? Oh, so small p, sorry. You can see it down here in which key. If I press space P, now completion is enabled. So if I start writing Ubuntu, then it will make a suggestion, and then hello, and it will do based on the things that are already in a text. It will start doing suggestions. But you can see if I start typing it, if I just want to type something quickly, you will see that it starts doing all of these suggestions, and that was really annoying to me. If I want to focus, and if I want to do some proper writing, I don't want to have this little screen coming up all the time. So I don't want to have this screen popping up all the time. So I have a shortcut for this. If I press space, you will see the capital P says disable completion, and now I don't have this anymore. So that's not a problem anymore. And yes, I could, every time I open a Markdown file, I could press space P, but I think that was a bit too much work, so I created an auto command for it. The next one is a auto command where I wanted to disable stuff on a Terraform fixtures file. That didn't work out very well, so I had to stop that. And it's commented out, as you can see, but I figured I will come back to it later, but I found a different workaround for the time being. Here, the next auto command is another file type command, which matches git commit, markdown, and pandoc files. And here I want to set the rep on true, and I want to disable the spelling. So Neovim actually has pretty good, or Vim. Vim has actually very good spell checker, but I don't want to have that on default. And the next auto command, actually, I could have added that to this one now that I see it here. I'm actually just repeating myself, so maybe I should just add that here. Oh, wait, look. Here's the difference. This is why I had to have it in an hour, remember? So here you see I am using a callback function, and that has a few commands. But here I have a command that says set no spell. So instead of setting a variable in the Vim options local, I actually had to run the command set no spell. So this is just a Vim command, no spell here, or set spell. Now it will actually start correcting spelling. You see it is underlining these words over here. That is the set spell. So I had to do two different functions for this, apparently. This one and this one, but all they do is disable any sort of form of spelling checking on markdown files, git commit files, and pandoc files. The next auto commands are go fmt and go import. So when I'm writing Go files, I want to do go import when I change the modules. So, it has been a while since I've been writing Go, but let's see. Repos. Do I have my let's see, Go. Let's see, projects. Well, here, this is a very simple example, but here you see you have this fmt print line here, and this needs to be imported. But if I do something like sort, yeah, here, see? I'm adding a sort module and then find, and then I can do kek, I don't know, something. But you saw that this is a package that needs to be imported. And when I'm doing this, if I save the file now, it will actually import it. So it fixes the imports for me automatically as I am writing, because the auto command is set. It says here buff write pre. So before writing to the buffer, it is going to run this command, go format and go import. This is also this also fixes the auto formatting. So it automatically formats as I am writing Go code. If I just, I don't know, sort, find like this. Now, when I write it, you see it is, well, I'm writing some dysfunctional code here, but you see that it's doing some formatting as I save it. So that's what this auto command is doing. And then the last auto command is, again, it is a command that sort of forces the completion to be true. Because when I'm writing Go code, I want it to be always true. And apparently, sometimes when I had Go files, it sometimes would not start automatically, so I had to create an Autocommand to facilitate this. So that was the Autocommands file and lazy file. Up next, we have Keymaps. Right, so let's go through the Keymaps that I've configured for my Neovim setup. So Keymaps are a huge part of everyone's personal configuration, and I found it quite inspiring sometimes to read other people's configuration. But basically, this all came about by sort of small problems that I was having that I thought, oh, I'm doing this too many times. I just want to have this fixed, or I want to be able to do this quicker by just adding a few keys. So the way I've set this up is with a function. It's vim keymap set, and the way this works is that you can write wrapper functions for this, but I just do the basic function. So the vim keymap set, first it takes an argument that's called n, so that's just for normal mode, and then it takes the key combination, so leader P. Leader is the space key for me. So leader is a key that you press before something, and then if I press leader P, then this command is being sent to Neovim. cmd Lua require CMP setup enabled true. So now the completion is enabled. That's what this key map function does. And here's another one. This one is set up on multi-line. So we have the normal mode, we have leader capital P, and then when I press that, it disables the CMP completion. Next, we have insert the date in my desired configuration. So here I have a script that's called genDate. So genDate here. This is just a way to create a date. Sometimes I need that. And this command, so if I press leader D, it then runs that command like this, because in Vim, what you can do is if I do genDate like this, then it will run the command in the shell and print the output to the buffer. See, there. So, but if I do read exclamation mark genDate, then it will read it and insert it into the buffer. See? So that's what I'm doing here. So I have a script that's outside of Neovim and that I'm calling by just running that in the shell. And that is really powerful. I will get into this later. But that's how I've set it up with the keymaps. So every time I press leader D, then genDate is being called, and then the output of that is inserted into my Vim buffer. So up next we have the one for LSP, and it just says leader S, capital S. So when I do that, it just sends the LSP stop command. And when you press LSP here and tab, then you see you have a few LSP commands at your disposal. So if you do LSP info, then it will show you which language servers are attached to the buffer. And likewise, you can stop the LSP server, because sometimes when it's not working properly, or you're editing a file and it thinks that it's a different file, you will get a lot of errors. So it's handy to have a way to quickly disable the LSP server. This command is, it will surround the word with quotes. So it will select in the word and then it will add this around it. This is a very useful thing sometimes when you want to surround something. Let's see, am I going to risk this? Well, leader WSQ. Yeah, here we go. See, it surrounded the word with quotes. That's how what this command does. Here is a replace. It replaces the backward slashes in a file that what I'm editing. Here I have telescope symbols. So if I do leader FS, then I have all of my emojis ready here. So grinning face, or if I want to have a house, then I do have a house in here and it inserts it. So that's what this is for. Next, we have, this is an interesting one, current line to title case. Let's see, does that work? I somehow remember that this was broken, but let's try it out. Leader RLT. Yeah, this is broken, but I did write a script for that. So if I do bang bang title, now the line is converted to title case. This is a little Go program that I wrote. Can I find that very quickly? Repos. Is that in Go? Yeah, here's the title. So if I go title.go, here, this is, it takes the input and use strings title function to convert it to title case. And when I do it like that, so if I am in this thing, I press exclamation mark, or bang, bang. This takes the current line and sends that to the terminal. I press the title command. It is then being fed into the title command. The title command outputs a different, it gives the output, and the output is then inserted into the buffer here. And that way I can capitalize all of the words in a sentence or in a line of text. I'm sure there are easier ways to do this, but I thought that was a fun project to do it that way too. Next, we have keep the cursor in the middle when scrolling with Ctrl D and U. Now, this is really useful. So if I go to my Autocommands file and scrolling with Ctrl D and Ctrl U, you can quickly scroll through a file. But normally, if I'm on the top of the file here, right? If I press Ctrl D, then normally the cursor would be all the way at the bottom. But as you saw now, the cursor is in the middle. So then it's much easier on the eyes to see where you actually are instead of having the cursor at the bottom. It's a really, really, really useful remapping. So it actually takes the Ctrl D normal mapping and then it adds ZZ to it. Center the cursor. ZZ is centering the cursor. Really nice. And for searching, yeah, I have a similar thing. So when I search in a file, let's see, I'm searching for this, and then if I go next, then it centers it instead of just showing it at the bottom of the file. So it's much easier to see where you are. And finally, we have a few maps around Go related. So when I'm writing a Go file, I can just press leader GT and it will run the go test command, which is very useful to see if your program is actually working. And finally, I have a little snippet here that's called Go YouTube. So if I am writing a markdown file, so vtemp test.md, and if I then go leader HT. Wait, is it not working? Wait, it was giving me an error. Hold on here. Okay. So what's happening here is that I've been editing this file, and LazyVim actually reads that as you are going. So I have to close this file and not change the setting, not save the changes. Close this, try again. And yeah, okay, so I actually managed to save my file. So let's go back to my dot files. And I'm going to do git restore nvim lua config keymaps. So now it's just back to normal. And now I'm not getting that error anymore. And if I then go to leader HY, then it inserts this sort of snippet. And this is for when I'm writing blog posts. Now I only have to paste in the YouTube ID of the video, and then it will be embedded as a, let's see here, you see this is a blog post on my blog, and with this syntax I can quickly embed a video. So that is what that key binding is all about. And well, that was a little live debugging as I was going along too. That was my Keymaps configuration file. Let's move on to the next one. So the next file we are going through is the options file. Not very much interesting here. This is usually huge in my normal Vim configurations, but as Lazy takes away a lot of the configuration for me, then this file is not as expensive as it used to be. I start with a local opt. So this is just a local variable. So I just can write opt instead of Vim opt every time. Here we have opt ignore case. And if I press Shift K here, then we see that ignore case, this setting does ignore case in search patterns. That's really useful when searching through large documents. So I don't want to have it that case sensitive. Here I'm disabling spell. And here is fold method manual and fold enable false. So when you don't have this, then actually YAML files and markdown files, they will, I think by default, they will fold everything. And that is really, really annoying to me. I don't want to have anything folded. I rarely use folds, actually. Sometimes I do, like maybe if I'm writing a book or something, I might use that. But then still, I think I would prefer just having separate files instead of having one huge file, and which is so complicated that you need to resort to folds. Well, here you see I have some old stuff here. It's very likely that this came from my old Neovim config. So before I started using LazyVim, I was using Kickstart Vim or normal Neovim. And I just ported over all of the stuff from there. And then I kept it in here just for future sake if I want to use it later. So these are all commented out, so I won't go into it right now. Scrolling is opt number is false. What does that do again? Print the line number in front of each line, right? You see this often in people's configuration where I had that for a long time, but actually I didn't really like that. I mean, I can set it to true, and then I thought it would reload, but apparently it doesn't. Well, anyway, just keep it false. I don't like to have the numbers there anymore. And the relative number, that's the one where you, well, let's just try that out. True. And true. Then I quit. I press R and open the file. And now you see I have the line number to the left of the file here. And also it says here 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it says the relative line number. So if I want to say delete until O tab stop, then I can do D8D, and then I know exactly which number to press, basically. Well, I had that for a long time. I thought I needed that, but I find that I don't use that at all. When I need the line number, it is, you can't see it now because my head is in front of it here. Down here you see the line number. So if I go up a line, you see it's 45, 46. You see the line number there already. It's in my Lua line configuration. So I don't need to have that in front of every line. So that's why I decided to set these to false. So go back, open that again, and here we go. So no line numbers anymore. In general, I want to have as little as possible on the screen. And those line numbers were making me a bit nervous sometimes. Scroll off. This setting when I'm scrolling, if I go all the way down, then you will see that at the bottom, like the cursor doesn't reach the bottom completely. It sort of hovers above, right? And that is this number is set by scroll off. You can set that to 12 too or higher, but then at least the cursor doesn't go all the way down when you're scrolling. It just hovers up there a little bit, and I found that to be much easier on the eyes. Line break, that breaks the line if it extends from the field of vision. So if on, Vim will wrap long lines at a character in break rather than at the last character that fits on the screen. Oh, okay. Right. So it influences the way it breaks lines. I don't completely understand currently why I set this, but apparently at some point there was a problem that I was having with line breaks, and then I set this to true, and I have never needed to adjust it ever since. Here is a lot of indentation configuration. I had this in my older files because I was my language server and auto formatting wasn't working that well then, so I had to manually configure the way this works. So expand tab, that it converts the tabs to spaces, and then tab stop. With the tab stop setting, you can tell it how many spaces a tab character should be. So Python has very opinionated, I was writing a lot of Python at that time, and Python has a very opinionated way of how tabs and spaces should be formatted and how many spaces there should be. And I believe it's 4. I don't currently remember, but that was that's why I needed to do this. Some window. Now, apparently I'm not using these settings. They influence how, when you split a window, where it will actually be split. So when on splitting a window, I'll put the new window below the current one. But I find that if I just do vsplit here, then it will just split it to the right. And if I do split, it will split it below. And that's also, that's enough for me. I don't have to, at some point I apparently needed some more configuration of this, but I'm not using that anymore. Some completion tweaking. Yeah, apparently I didn't need that anymore. And lastly, this is a setting where on macOS I'm pointing it to my browser. And this is needed for when I'm editing markdown files and I want to do a live preview in the browser. So let's go to my blog and let's just open a random file here. So if I do markdown preview, then it opens my browser. And if I then go here, so if I'm in this file, then if I'm scrolling up and down, it will actually scroll with it as I am editing. And this is a really nice way of writing, because sometimes when you're writing an article that's going to be represented in the browser, it helps to actually see it, how it's going to be represented. Sometimes I miss spelling mistakes or I miss certain formatting if I'm just looking at it in the terminal, and then it really helps to have it as a preview here. So that is what that setting is for. And Markdown Preview is awesome. It's a really, really, really cool plugin. So I'm going to move that to number 1 again, close this, back to Neovim, and that was all the options. So now we can move on to the plugins section. Moving on to the plugins section, let's start with colorscheme.lua. So in my terminal and almost everywhere, I like to use the Groovebox material color scheme. I think it's a beautiful very soothing color scheme. It's very easy on the eyes, and especially in the evening, it is just so nice to have this scheme. So when I discovered this, I changed a couple of times, but 95% of the time I've been on this color scheme because it's just so beautiful. And it is just a plugin, and then the way this works, the way Lazy loads plugins is that you have this little block, because Lazy reads everything that's in the plugins directory, and as you see, you have to return this to Lazy. In normal Neovim, you won't have this return statement, but because Lazy is a package manager, it is a sort of a wrapper around it. So you just add the repo like this, and then it will load the color scheme. And then so this installs the plugin, and then I have to pass this option to the LazyVim plugin. So LazyVim is a plugin into Neovim, and then you're telling it, okay, you have to use this color scheme. So that's how I've set up my color scheme. Next, we have disabled.lua, and this is a file where I disable certain plugins that came with LazyVim. So let's see if I can show you that really quick. LazyVim can be run in a Docker container. Try it with Docker here. So I'm not sure if this is going to work, but I'm just going to give it a try. I haven't done it for a while. So it's going to pull a Docker image, and in there it's going to install LazyVim, and then we should have a sort of default installation of LazyVim available to us. So it's now pulling the Docker images, and it's going to be starting up a Linux or an Alpine distribution, installing LazyVim into it and configure it with the default options. It is starting. Here we go. It's actually really amazing. It's so cool. Look at this. All right, so here is LazyVim. So here you see, this is the first one that I disabled. Here you see these messages that are coming up here. Normally in Vim, they are down here. Those are messages. And it looks pretty cool like this, but I didn't want to have it like that. Sorry, but I can't work like that. But let's go and do a new file, and let's try a couple of things. So here, all of these messages, that's what I've disabled. So that is done by, I think it was Vim notify and noise. Those are both things that are disabled. But yeah, if I just, I don't really know what I should be doing here, because it is just in a container and there's not much that I can do. But as you see here, that's the big one that I have disabled with all of these notifications. I didn't want that, and I did that by adding that disabled.lua. But this is also how you can just quickly run LazyVim in a Docker container and to try it out. So it's actually pretty cool. Next, we have example.lua. So this is a file that is included with LazyVim, and this is just an explanation of how to configure it. It's actually really useful. Every time I want to add something, I just take a quick look here and see how they do it. And this is basically all of the documentation that I've needed, in addition to but I must also say that the docs of LazyVim are actually really good. It's also one of the reasons why I use LazyVim, because it has very nice searchable documentation, and it works really well. Go.lua. here I am installing the packages I want for Go and Go formatting and such like. So you have a few packages here. You have LSP config. These are all dependencies for Go and Vim. So Go and Vim is the main one, and it needs these, so it will ensure that these are installed just in case you haven't. And when that runs, it will run a config function, and it will do a few go.install. It will sort of configure that, and this is all you need to get going with Go editing in Neovim. This will help if you have LazyVim installed, and which sets up all of the auto completion for you with Lua snip. Then if you install this package, you are good to go with installing or with coding in Go. Let's see. Oh, here you see I use this disable language server shortcut. I pressed space S. And I did that because apparently Lua was throwing some errors here, but I know this works. So LSP config, this takes a few options, and all of these are servers of language servers that I want to have installed. And these are added like this, but when you do it, then Mason actually installs these. So to actually manage the language servers, we have Mason, and this will show you all of the language servers that are installed, but also the ones that should be installed. And here you can very quickly update them, and if you press the let's go back to Mason. Let's see, if you press G question mark, then you see all of the shortcuts for it. And if I then press capital U, then it will start updating all of the outdated packages. But you can install language servers from Mason like that. But if you do it like this, then you are sure that it actually installs when you are on a different system, and it will also handle the updates better. So this is how I do it. And actually, when you're adding these, space start. Let me just close this and reopen it. LSP config. So the problem is that these names don't exactly correspond with the names that you see in Mason. So when you want to say install YAML, then you have to do it like this. Or if I delete Helm, here it will show you suggestions what you need to do. So the names don't completely correspond, and you have to rely on autocompletion to find the right server for you. So just as a quick tip, if you just add just YAML like this, it won't work. Well, YAML ls will work, but YAML won't, because it needs to have a specific name that is probably different from the package in Mason, as a pro tip. So in summary, this is just a list of the language servers that I want to have installed at all times. Next, we have markdown.lua. So in the previous section, I showed you how Markdown Preview works, what that does. So I don't have to do that again, but it is configured like this. And this is basically all I have for Markdown in this file. I do have another Markdown related, that's pandoc.lua, and I might just well do that straight away. So you have Vim pandoc and Vim pandoc syntax, and this is actually what's formatting my Markdown files like this. Let's see here. So here you see the headings get this really nice character instead of the hashtag. So it has this really nice character. It makes them bold. And also when I make something bold in the text like this, it will format it as bold. So I really like this for editing Markdown in Neovim. It just basically handles the formatting really well. And Pandoc is a way of converting and generating documents out of text files. So you can use Pandoc to create PDF files out of Markdown files and convert them to all sorts of things. I don't use that functionality that much, but there is a lot more to Pandoc than what I am using. I think Pandoc here, Pandoc highlight, Pandoc folding. There's a bunch of stuff you can do. And if I do space sh, Pandoc, then here there is a bunch of functionality in here. It's quite big, but I don't use it that much. It's basically my Markdown formatter, and it's really useful, and it's the best way to do it, in my opinion. In between Markdown and Pandoc, we have no neck pain. So this, related to the newsboat config that I showed you earlier, this centers the text. So if I'm back here, I'm now in this Markdown file, and you see that the text goes, it spans across the entire screen. Well, if I press space NN, then it is going to add columns to the side, and it centers it in the middle. Now, when I'm recording, I have my terminal set to quite a large text size, so it's easier to read for you guys. But if I do stop recording, then it changes my text size of the terminal. So if I reopen that file now, then here you see this is how it would usually look for me. And it is not nice to have the text spanning across the entire screen. So now if I press space NN, now it's centered in this nice column, and my eyes sort of look at only that column, and I don't have to move my head, or I don't have to strain to read all of the text, and it formats it really nicely. And yeah, that's why it's called no neck pain, because you don't have to move your neck. So that's actually quite a very funny name for that. So that was the stop rec. Now I'll do start rec again, and then it increases the font size by replacing it in my Alacrity config, and it gives me this handy little checklist if to check if I set up if my microphone is on and if my keys are being cast. It's just a little reminder to myself when I start recording. And that was no neck pain. Pandoc we've done. Finally, or almost finally, we have some configuration for Telescope. So Telescope is the plugin that I use for opening files like this. So space FF, this is Telescope, what you see here. And what I have done here is, this is just the key map to open Telescope for finding files. So FF, like this. But you can also do space SG, and now it's grabbing the files. So if I'm looking for YAML, for example, then it is actually it grabs, so it searches inside of the files. And I don't know, Lua, everything that contains Lua, I can view it here. But I have changed this from normal grab to rip grab. Rip grab is a program that's a lot faster than normal grab. And then for the command, I'm also passing a few flags here. So -- files and -- glob. So that means that it allows me to use globbing for it. And I ignore the .git directory when grabbing. And -l, I believe, follows symbolic links. So sometimes I have directories, like for example, in my second brain, I have my blog directory. I can just show you that. SBCDZ. And then stat Z. Here I have a set directory. Can I see that? ls LA LA grep Z. Yeah, here we go. So here I have Z, which is a symbolic link to my blog directory. So when I'm searching, when I'm in my second brain and I am searching for files, I want that to include my blog files when I'm searching for it, because a lot of my Zettelkasten is published. And then when I'm grepping, I want it to make sure that it also is grepping the stuff that is in the symbolic link. And that's why I have the -L option here. All right. Next, we have some configuration for Telescope. So that means that this enables FCF, so Fuzzy File Finder. That's why I am able to sort of say, for example, dn and stat, and then it will fuzzily find all of these, or dn. It will not only search for a like literal result, but it will also show partial results, and that's what Fuzzy File Finder does. And you need to set this up explicitly in Telescope if you want to have that functionality. And finally, I have NVim Telescope. I showed you that before, but if I do, let's see, fs space fs, and then I can search for smileys like a house or a computer, and I can just insert it like that. So that's really useful too. And that is it for the Telescope config. Not much special really, but there is a bit of tweaking that I've done. And then finally we have treesitter.lua, and treesitter is responsible for configuration of for formatting, and also indentation, but also the colors of the stuff. So you see here in Lua, these keywords are all red, and these are all blue, and the strings are green. This is all being handled by treesitter, and also the indentation. So treesitter is the parser that will handle the indentation and the colors and so forth. And by adding this list of options, you are ensuring that treesitter installs these every time you set up on a new system, because sometimes it will intelligently detect the file that you are trying to edit, and then you will I think it will install it automatically, but I prefer to just give it into a list like this and to make sure that it's always available to me. All right, that was the plugins section. So the only thing that's left really are just these couple of spelling files. And when you're writing in Vim, it will check spelling, but then you can also add the words to them, and it will just save them in a file. And these are apparently the words that I have saved over time. And that's it. That's my entire Neovim config. It used to be quite a lot bigger, and I was using a lot more plugins. But as I was going through this, I realized that I have minimized it quite a bit and sort of went back to the basics over time, and has been virtually unchanged for the past 6 months, maybe a couple of tweaks here and there, but no big changes. And it just works really well for me in my workflow as a cloud engineer, cloud native engineer, working mainly with Kubernetes and Azure. So that concludes the Neovim walkthrough. Thank you so much for watching, and if you have any questions, I hope to see you in my School community.